I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. May we have a roll call, please?
Baker.
Here.
Broadway. Here. Pesh. Here. Holmes.
Here.
Powers. Here. Rohan.
Here.
Trebus. Euler.
Oh, great. Couldn't done it without you, Kirk. I'm going to ask for the approval of the action minutes of March 22nd, 2017.
Move to approve.
Moved and seconded to approve the minutes of March 22nd, 2017. All those please say aye in favor. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? Hearing none, we move on to agenda review. Anything on the agenda that needs to be adjusted or changed?
I did want to point out to the board that you received a salmon color copy, and I want to thank our eagle eye, the eagle eye of Lee Bastian of the Sheridan Mac, who
All right.
saw the error in our cut and paste on item 9.
Okay, thank you. Any other adjustments or changes on the agenda? Alrighty, hearing no objection, we will move on to public comment. Now is the time for anyone in the audience that wishes to address the board on any item that's not on the agenda. Please step forward, state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes to voice your concerns. Is there anyone here who wishes to address the board on public comment? Seeing none, we'll move to the consent calendar. These items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member, staff member, or interested citizen may request an item to be removed from the consent agenda for discussion. Any items need to be removed for discussion? I'll ask for approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
Moved and second to approve consent calendar. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? Hearing none, we will move to our 9 o'clock timed item. This is a public hearing, State Route 65 widening project draft environmental document.
Good morning, Chair Holmes, members of the board. We're going to be giving a presentation on the recently released draft environmental document for the State Route 65 widening project, and we'll be giving a project overview, and then we can open it up for public comment. I do want to take a moment here just to thank our project consultant team, Matt Brogan, our consultant project manager from Mark Thomas and Company, right here, and also Claire Broman, who took the lead on the environmental document from ICF. And I actually do want to give a special thank you to Claire, because in the 11th hour, we got some significant comments from Caltrans, and her team turned it around in one day so we could still make this meeting. So we really appreciate that, Claire.
Yeah.
I also want to mention Rod Murphy, who's right behind me here, Caltrans project manager, and Thelina Battelle. She's the Caltrans environmental staff. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here today, but those two folks were key in helping to move this project along. So our project limits extend on State Route 65 from the Galleria Boulevard, Stanford Ranch Road interchange, all the way up to Lincoln Boulevard in the city of Lincoln. And that's approximately about 6 miles. And this project will connect to improvements planned at Interstate 80, State Route 65 interchange, and also at Placer Parkway. We've identified 4 key goals as part of the project, and that's based on input from our project partners, which are all shown here, and also, of course, input from the PCTPA board. The 2 key goals that we're focusing on is alleviating existing traffic congestion and improving safety. Another key part of this project is to add additional roadway capacity to accommodate the planned development in South Placer County. This is a photo taken in 2014, and so this is looking north from the Pleasant Grove Boulevard overcrossing in the morning. And at that time, traffic was backing up from Stanford Ranch Road, Galleria Boulevard, all the way towards Blue Oaks Boulevard. And this is a photo taken this year, and this is looking south from the Sunset Boulevard overcrossing. And in the morning, traffic is backing up over 3 miles. And I want to make a note here that we estimate that about 20% of traffic on southbound State Route 65 is actually diverting to local roadways due to the traffic congestion. This is a photo looking south from the Galleria Boulevard Stanford Ranch Road overcrossing on northbound State Route 65. And our project, the 65 widening, is going to need to accommodate all that traffic that is currently backing up onto Interstate 80 in both directions. And that's going to be especially true once we begin construction and actually construct phase 1 of the Interstate 80 State Route 65 interchange, which we plan on starting construction next year. I do want to make a note here about travel time. Currently, if you're driving on eastbound Interstate 80 from the Placer County line to northbound State Route 65 at Blue Oaks Boulevard, on average in the evening, that's taking motorists 25 minutes. That's 17 minutes more than at free flow speeds. So there's a lot of wasted time that's occurring on this corridor. We've been working on the environmental phase of the project since 2014, and over the last 3 years, we've had a community meeting in the city of Lincoln. 30 people attended that meeting. We've also had 6 town hall meetings throughout the county, and then we've also had a presentation to the Roseville Transportation Commission, and all of those were to gain input from residents and businesses on the improvements that are being proposed. We also have a project website, and we've been providing project updates through newsletters and also social media. And now our consultant project manager, Matt Brogan, is going to walk through the proposed improvements.
Morning.
Good morning. Happy to be here to present the project to you. I'm going to start with the portions of the improvements that are common to both alternatives. We do have 2 alternatives in our environmental document that we're studying. What you see on the screen here is common amongst both, and that is 6 lanes on Highway 65, a widening to 6 lanes from I-80 through the Blue Oaks interchange. Also auxiliary lanes between Galleria Boulevard, Stanford Ranch Road, and Pleasant Grove Boulevard. So there you see on the map we have Galleria Stanford Ranch on the left end of the exhibit. You see the widening through Pleasant Grove and then through the Blue Oaks Boulevard interchange. That's the southern portion of the widening project. There's a cross-section just demonstrating the existing condition on the bottom half. You see 2 mixed flow lanes, general purpose lanes in each direction with auxiliary lanes. We widen that in the northbound direction to provide 3 general purpose lanes, northbound 65, and then 3 general purpose lanes plus either a general purpose lane or a carpool lane in the southbound direction. And this is the cross section between Pleasant Grove Boulevard and Blue Oaks Boulevard. The next portion of the improvements, this is the north end. The widening north of Blue Oaks will consist of auxiliary lanes between Blue Oaks Boulevard and Sunset Boulevard interchanges. That's illustrated there in the blue on the left side of the screen. And then additional auxiliary lanes between the recently constructed Whitney Ranch Parkway and 12 Bridges interchange along 65. Again, those are auxiliary lanes connecting the existing auxiliary lanes between those interchanges. A cross-section demonstrating that as well. You see the existing condition, 2 general purpose lanes, and then the widening to provide the auxiliary lanes on the outside edge of Highway 65. So now we get into the project alternatives. We did carry forward 2 within the environmental document that you're considering today. Alternative 1 is the carpool lane alternative. Alternative 2 is what we're calling the general purpose lane alternative. And the differences between the 2, essentially alternative 1 provides a carpool lane that picks up just south of, or just at the Blue Oaks interchange and extends all the way to the carpool lane planned with the 8065 interchange. Alternative 2 provides a general purpose lane in lieu of the carpool lane, so that would be a general purpose lane extending from Blue Oaks Boulevard, and that would extend again into the carpool lane planned with the 8065 interchange. This is shown in plan view here on the screen. We show that alternative 1 here in cross section. You see this is between, again, Galleria Boulevard, Stanford Ranch, and Pleasant Grove. We have the 3 general purpose lanes in northbound direction with an auxiliary lane extended there as well. And then in alternative 1, you see the 3 general purpose lanes, the inside widening for the carpool lane, and then an auxiliary lane between Blue Oaks and Pleasant Grove Boulevard. here shows the difference between alternative 1 and alternative 2, and the main difference is there on the southbound direction. Instead of a carpool lane, we then have instead 4 general purpose lanes in the southbound direction. The northbound direction remains as is and unchanged between the 2 alternatives, with 3 general purpose lanes and the auxiliary lane connecting the 2 interchanges.
Thanks, Matt. We actually have a traffic simulation here of what the Phase 1 improvements would look like. And we're actually going to start with the existing conditions. This is actually 2015 in the morning, and we're starting out at the Blue Oaks Boulevard interchange and heading southbound on State Route 65 towards Interstate 80. And as shown here, you can see in 2015, traffic was backing up just past the Blue Oaks Boulevard overcrossing there. And then as we come up to the Pleasant Grove Boulevard interchange, really the main bottleneck is where the southbound on-ramp from Pleasant Grove Boulevard merges with State Route 65. And there's only 2 lanes on State Route 65. So you essentially have 3 lanes of traffic coming together. And that's our main bottleneck. And of course, with any bottleneck, it takes a while for that congestion to go away. So that continues all the way to Galleria Boulevard, Stanford Ranch Road, where it then opens up to 3 lanes at that overcrossing. So we're gonna have a second video here. This is year 2020 conditions. And this again is in the morning, but with the Phase 1 improvements. And we're starting again at the Blue Oaks Boulevard interchange and traveling southbound on State Route 65 towards Interstate 80. And what the Phase 1 improvements would include is actually the 6 lanes being extended from the Interstate 80 State Route 65 interchange plan improvements all the way up to Blue Oaks Boulevard, and then also adding auxiliary lanes between Galleria Boulevard, Stanford Ranch Road, and Pleasant Grove Boulevard. And as you can see here, with the Phase 1 improvements in place, the existing traffic congestion on southbound State Route 65 would be eliminated. And I do want to make a note that if improvements are not put in place, that by year 2040, we actually estimate that 40% of traffic on State Route 65 will be diverting to local roadways due to the traffic congestion. So a notice was released on May 12th for the public to review and comment on the draft environmental document. The notice was published in the Auburn Journal, in the Roseville Press Tribune, in the Placer Herald, and also the Lincoln News Messenger. We also mailed that notice to all potentially affected agencies and interested parties, and we emailed it out to our email distribution list, which is close over 1,000 people. I also want to mention the Sacramento Business Journal recently had an article, and that's actually on a blue piece of paper that was handed out related to the environmental document. And CBS Channel 13 News actually had a segment on Friday on the project also. Related to the environmental document, there are hard copies at PCTPA's office and also Caltrans' office. We have them at 4 Placer County libraries, and of course you can also access it electronically on the project website. The document is available for a 30-day review period, and comments are due by June 14th. So the draft environmental document itself is an initial study mitigated negative declaration, and that's to meet state environmental clearance requirements. And we also are pursuing federal environmental clearance. And based on the evaluation of the potential environmental issues, what you see here are 9 that were determined to either have no effect or a less than significant effect. And I do want to point out the 2 biological resources and traffic were identified as a potential effect that needed mitigation measures. But with the mitigation measures, they were reduced to less than significant. And then both build alternatives actually will be constructed totally within the existing right-of-way. So we don't need to acquire any right-of-way. And also it was determined that no new sound walls will be needed along the corridor. So getting into project schedule, Once we receive all the environmental related comments, we'll respond to those in the final document and we'll return to the board. We plan towards the end of this year. In the meantime, we'll be working with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Army Corps of Engineers to get their concurrence on the project. And once we have that concurrence, the board can then make a recommendation on the preferred alternative to Caltrans. And then moving forward, project design and construction are both dependent on available funding. Since the project is located on the state highway system, Caltrans is the lead environmental agency, and they will ultimately have approval of the document. And comments can be submitted directly to Caltrans by mail, by email, or we also have comment cards on the back table that can be submitted today. As noted previously, comments are due by June 14th, and all of this information along with the environmental document can be accessed on our website at pctpa.net. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and then we can open it up for any public comment.
Supervisor Euler?
Just to be clear, you are not looking for board direction today on preferred alternative?
We're not. We're only soliciting comments from the public. We'll evaluate those comments, and then we'll return to the board for a recommendation.
And those comments from the public, are those comments on the preferred alternative or simply comments on the environmental document?
They could be either.
Thank you.
Director Trebus?
I wanted you to make it clear, if you can, that the year that you used was 2020 as to what the improvement would be. To what extent is the anticipated or known potential future development going to be handled with this highway modifications for what we know now to be what looks like a continued area of more and more residents and other businesses up that corridor?
Yeah, well, you'll notice that north of Blue Oaks, there didn't include any inside widening.
Yes,
And we actually looked through year 2040, so we anticipate growth through 2040. And it's been determined that inside widening can be deferred till after 2020.
Super.
Any other questions from board members? All righty, then I will go ahead and open it up. It's a public hearing. Anyone that wishes to address the agency on the document, please step forward.
Good morning. Mike Karabedian, Placer Group, Sierra Club. The unacceptable land use analysis here limits it to 1,000 feet along the corridor. And the maps show this narrow corridor in the various documents. As it says, on the initial study, page 22, it refers to the two studies that this is based on. One of them, the ICE international study. It says, accordingly, this community impacts analysis considers only those areas within 1,000 feet of the SR main line. Now, even though the purpose of the project is to serve much broader areas, our other key point is that the alternatives, there needs to be an alternative analysis that includes this area from I-80 to Lincoln as a regional transit corridor with feeder in by transit and bike and walking to that from the new developments that are proposed and as much as possible for existing developments. And but the MND says on page 142, because modifications to the operations of local transit system providers are not under Caltrans jurisdiction, they were not considered further as part of the proposed project. In other words, an alternative like a major transit corridor has not been studied. It's hard to understand because the front of the document says you were involved in this as well. So, and transit, that kind of transit project means jobs. So there are one estimate of 70,000 units proposed for construction in this area, plus all kinds of commercial and so forth. There's no analysis in here of that. The growth-inducing impact of this project is not addressed. the problem of cumulative impacts is not addressed by this project. So for each of these and others, there are fair arguments that this project could have a significant impact on the environment, and an environmental impact report is required. Now, in the past, we've given to this committee the UCD, as part of a national traffic institute with a couple of organizations. We've given you the handout that points out all the studies show that increasing capacity does not relieve congestion in the long run or very much in the short run. It perpetuates the problems that makes it worse. This EIR is your opportunity, where you should be addressing this issue. Now, we note that the county does not have a climate action plan, at least one of the cities. Lincoln does not have a climate action plan, though you've applied for and not gotten grants for this, I think. That's Sierra Club's number one concern. We really think that you need to get busy to work on this and improve this document. Now, the MND is really a challenge in terms of the parties here, a challenge to you and to Caltrans to address transit and these environmental issues. For the Sierra Club, we're willing to participate and talk to and work. And for developers, we hope there are developers who would like to have their developments be part of a regional transit solution to the problems along this corridor. And we'd be glad to meet with those developers who want to make that happen. So good luck, and we will help.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to make comments on the draft document? All righty, hearing none, I will close the public hearing. And that's all that's required of us for this item. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. So now we will move to item H, Placer County Freeway Service Patrol service changes.
Good morning. I have this item here. We're requesting you, the board, to authorize the executive director to negotiate and sign what we're calling change order number 2 to the Placer County Freeway Service Patrol Contractor Services Agreement, which is identified as 15 FSP 01. For members of the board that aren't familiar with the Freeway Service Patrol, it's a joint program between the California Highway Patrol, of which we have 3 officers here today that will speak to the program. 4, okay, sorry, thank you. And Caltrans as well. And the program that we operate currently operates on State Route 65 and Interstate 80, and that's about 15 miles of our congested freeways, and it operates Mondays through Fridays from 6:30 to 9:30 in the morning, and in the afternoon from 4 to 7 p.m. Now, the goal of the program is to maximize, the effectiveness of the freeway system, and the way we do this is by removing disabled vehicles and vehicles that break down and get them onto the shoulder and then off the freeway to a safe location in order to eliminate or minimize what's called non-recurrent congestion. Now, the current program, we have a contract with Extreme Towing, and that was approved by the board in December 2014 for a not-to-exceed amount of $261,500. Because of various issues with state grant funding, we came back before the board in May of 2015 and requested board approval of what was called change order number 1 to reduce the budget to $251,500. And as part of that, in reducing the program, we eliminated Sunday service, and then we also adjusted the service hours in order to minimize what was a growing overtime problem based on the hours that we had initially identified with the contractor. The program is currently funded through a combination of sources, federal funds, the congestion mitigation air quality funding picks up about 30% of the federal fund source. The local fund sources are about 10%, and state funding is about 60%. The local fund sources have been sort of problematic over the years, and we've used a combination of fund sources. We've used our Transportation Development Act funds. We have applied for and have been successful in the past with the Placer County Air Pollution Control District to use their funding, as well as when funding was available through the Placer County Indian Gaming Special Distribution Funds. For fiscal year 17-18, which begins July 1st, we're going to incur some additional costs that we have not incurred previously in the past. Those are associated with costs that are currently borne by the Sacramento Transportation Authority, and they have requested that both our agency and the El Dorado Transportation Commission share in those costs. And they primarily revolve around centralizing radio communication and web-based database services. And the cost of that will be about $5,500 annually. In addition, the contract that we have with Extreme Towing is a 3-year contract. It comes up for renewal January 2nd, 2018. And the contract includes 3 one-year option years. And so at this point in time, we're recommending that we execute an extension to the contract. Extreme Towing is recommending a 7.1% rate increase. I know that sounds high. I've spent time on the phone talking with my counterparts across the state with FSP services. And as of course you can appreciate, in the more urbanized areas with contract renewals, the rate increases are higher. And generally, the rate increases across the FSP operators have ranged between 10 to 20%. So the 7.1% in that context seems like it's a pretty good deal. The issue with the rate increases is primarily the state minimum wage is increasing. There are also drivers seeking better wages. The economy is improving, and there are jobs out there, and people can go get better paying jobs, perhaps with less hassle than what they experience as a tow truck driver, as well as insurance costs are increasing. So with the combination of the increased costs and a flat to decreasing budget, and with uncertainty regarding local revenue picture, we're recommending that there needs to be a change in the service level. So that's why we're requesting the board to approve a change order number 2. Change order number 2 will eliminate what's called the service truck or Atom truck. So we have right now 3 trucks. We have 2 tow trucks, one that operates on 65 and one that operates on 80. The Atom or service truck operates also along 80. We worked with the CHP and consulted with them, and they agree that if we were to eliminate a truck, it's probably the Atom truck would be the best bet. And that would produce a savings estimated around $25,000 a year. Change order number 2 would also extend the contractors execute the option year, and so basically it would extend the contract to January 2nd, 2019. It would approve the rate increase requested by Extreme Towing, and it would also modify a fuel charge formula that we have so that our formula would be consistent with the formula used by the Sacramento Transportation Authority and the El Dorado Transportation Commission. And so with that, I would be glad to answer any questions. And as I had mentioned earlier, we have 4 CHP officers here today that Officer Steve McCumsey and Seth Mormon, who are both with the FSP Patrol, as well as others that may wish to speak to the benefits of the FSP program.
All righty. Director Broadway, you had a question?
Thank you. Yes. What services have been provided by the Atom truck specifically?
Well, the Atom truck, so it does the same thing as the tow truck. So, I mean, it's out there on the freeway, it's roaming, and so if a person breaks down, the Atom truck gets over and helps the stranded motorist, pushes the vehicle off to the shoulder. Tow truck will come if necessary to tow the truck away to what's a safe location off of the freeway. So it provides water in case of radiator needs water. It provides a gallon of gas. It will change tires. Basically does everything that a tow truck does, but the tow truck can tow the vehicle off of the freeway. And so
if you need removal, the Atom truck would have to rely on the tow truck. So that's the
Right.
only difference.
Right, yeah.
So do we have an idea of the calls for service that were provided by the Atom truck on an annual basis?
I could provide that data. We provide to the board here quarterly as part of the staff status report in the back, the FSP statistics. They're broken down by various categories, not necessarily by truck, but I can go back and reproduce those statistics so that we can pull them up by the truck. But in talking with the CHP, it was felt best that if we were going to eliminate and try to meet our budget goals, that the Adam truck would be the best candidate.
Okay. So with the Adam truck being removed potentially, the calls would then have to be addressed by the tow truck. So
Correct.
is that seen as a more expensive solution? So for the service provider, do they see that as more costly, having a tow truck respond as opposed to the Adam truck? The Adam truck's likely a van or a utility truck of some sort.
The Adam truck is like a utility truck, it's not a van. When I'm talking with the Extreme Towing, the contractor felt that if you're going to eliminate service, the Adam truck is the candidate to eliminate. It's kind of like an extra, to what the tow trucks do out there on the freeway. And so,
Do we expect that, by removing that from service, do we expect that to create delays? I mean, I know that the intent is to remove those disabled vehicles because, of course, that has an impact, and I'm sure our officers can speak to the impact that you have when there's a vehicle on the side of the road and what that does to traffic. So is it going to have an impact, and do we have an idea of what that impact would be?
well, it certainly, when you remove a truck from service, there will be some impact because it'll be one less, vehicle out there able to assist the public, the motoring public. So I guess in a more perfect world where we didn't have budget difficulties, then we would probably have more trucks and wider spans of service as experienced elsewhere within the state. But we have to work within our budget constraints. In terms of the estimate, we don't have an estimate on that. I'm not sure exactly how we would produce that estimate because the congestion that we're dealing with is called non-recurrent congestion. So it's not the everyday, there's too many cars on the freeway jamming into 3 and 4 lanes. It's when a motorist breaks down or runs out of gas. Or of course, when you get, because of the congestion, you get the fender benders. And so it's varies by day, varies by hour. So I don't have an estimate on.
I think the answer is really that that help would be delayed.
Right, yeah.
So does,
It would still be available, but it wouldn't be as quick as if you had 2 trucks out there.
okay. And so that, again, has the carryover on the flows of traffic. And
Indeed.
again, I know that's not an easy mathematical equation to determine what that impact is, but when you talk about the cost benefit, it's $25,000. We want to stay within our budget, certainly, but if our impact is significantly greater than that by not having the service there because of the impact on traffic flows, if we have a sense for that, then do we find alternatives as opposed to eliminating the service? Is there either a charge for service, or have we looked at different ways that we could make that up to maintain the levels of service?
Well, it's the program is a free program, and that's part of I believe, the condition with the state program and the state funding. So I don't believe we could charge for the service based upon the nature of the funding that we receive in this state. That said, other states, do charge. Other states also tie in with insurance companies. For example, AAA does sponsor freeway service patrols in a number of states. Of course, they have the advertisement on the vehicle. The state, for whatever reasons, doesn't have that yet as part of the state program.
If I might, as part of our discussion a little bit later on the agenda, there is SB1, and there is a little bit of an increase of funding for the Freeway Service Patrol out of SB1, that what we can do is take a look at what opportunities there might be to cobble together a little bit more money to reinstate that Adam truck moving forward. But this is the recommendation based on the budget we have available at this time. But we can certainly go with if the board wants to direct us to find more money to reinstate that, we can certainly do that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Those are all the questions I have.
I just have a quick follow-up question, and you mentioned it's Adam truck was on Interstate 80, but you didn't mention which area of Interstate 80. Could you clarify that, please?
The truck operates basically from the Placer County, Sacramento County line up to State Route 49.
Gotcha, thank you.
Director
Both
Miller.
trucks do.
So, couple of questions, kind of along the lines of my colleague from Rockland here. Currently, how is our provider notified, made aware of a vehicle in distress? Simply happens across somebody as they're driving? Or is there actually any kind of a communication system that somebody calls for?
Well, actually, that's probably a good question to introduce the CHP on that, because they're out in the field there, and
Okay.
so, you know.
Oh, great, come on up.
Come on up.
Good, because I got a lot of questions.
You carry guns, you can sure do anything you want.
Okay, first off, we'd like to thank the board and Mr. Melko for having us here at the meeting here. When you guys were asking about stats, I just produced some stats last night for our program. There were some located in your agenda packet. I'd just like to update you guys on kind of what the cut will cause here. So your Placer, this is from year to date. I don't know how you guys, if you guys have our fiscal year, but this is from January 1st to, actually, I ran them last night. So your current total of stats in the Placer County were 791. Of those, for the 281 Adam, which is being proposed to be cut today, out of those 791, they had 205. So that's kind of like a ballpark of how many assists you'd be losing. Now what I did also is I took out what's called surveyable assists. So those assists when the drivers are out there, surveyable assists when they're actually helping a motorist of the public. It's not removing debris, it's not tagging an abandoned vehicle. They're all, excuse me, helping an abandoned motorist out there. So of those, I don't know if you guys have seen the trucks out there or anybody has any interaction with the FSP program. Most of the time, you're going to see us on your bad day. Either your car is broken down, a crash. So it's not your best today, but I was going to turn it over to Seth here because we also have some survey assists, which I don't think you have ever seen as far as stats. We have a program we worked with Placer, El Dorado. Excuse me, I got an allergy going on here. But we work with all the counties that we oversee. We oversee Valley Division Freeway Service Patrol Program. So we have a central database that David was talking about regarding, we use that for statistical purposes, GPS location for all our trucks, so we can bring up real-time assists. So he was saying, he could produce reports. We have that access basically at the touch of a finger. So also, what I'm going to have Seth read off to you is a couple of the motorist comments, just to kind of give you a feel of what people are saying about our program. So like I said, I don't know if you've seen the trucks out there, know any friends or family that have had, I guess, interaction with our trucks, but it's always good. And I'd like to touch base on Mr. Melko's memo there, where he had a 5.0, I guess what was it,
Benefit cost.
benefit cost ratio. So Placer County is basically right in the middle of the pack between the big areas, small areas. Excuse me. So they're doing really well as far as the Caltrans computations that they make on their program. So the program's real well. So I'd like to turn it over to Seth here. He's going to read off a couple of public comments from the public here. So,
Good morning to the board. I'm definitely not in the business of budgets, but I can tell you this is a great program for your county here. So everybody that is affected by, so everybody that we assist out there has an opportunity to turn in a survey. So here's some of the feedback that you're getting on the service. Please keep this service. Garrett was as cool as could be and really helpful. This is directly from them. So my car was disabled after being hit by another vehicle and unable to move out of the traffic lanes. The FSP driver arrived before law enforcement to help clear the lanes of traffic. Garen was such a lifesaver today. I was stranded with my 15-month-old baby and my dog because my tire blew out. And seriously, not even 5 minutes later, he was there to help. I don't have any family around, so this service that he told me about is amazing. I'll keep the flyer in my glove box for the future. Huge thank you to Garen. Not even 15 minutes later, we were back on the road, and he was very polite and helpful. Garen, the driver who assisted me today, was very kind and helpful. I'm very grateful for his service and would definitely recommend to anyone.
I hope to never need the service again, but if I do, I will look for Placer County FSP. Garen was more than helpful. He helped my daughter when her car broke down on Highway 65. She was scared. He explained the process of FSP and offered good information. Happy to know we are supported as citizens with this great service. How lucky Placer County is to have this service. It made the upset of a minor accident more sorted out. Thank you. What an incredible service. So we get a ton of these, and they're all super positive. And I think, obviously we're here to support the program. I think the best way to do it is to let you know, how the residents of your county feel. And as Steve mentioned, this is only capturing data that is coming directly from people. So in addition to helping people directly, we've got drivers out there that are removing, ladders from the #1 lane, Christmas trees that fly out of the back of people's cars, you name it out there. So also, clearly we reduced, traffic congestion, rubbernecking, secondary collisions, and, we're just hoping that if there is any money in the budget, or if you guys, I don't know exactly how that works, but if it's possible, we think the program's great, and just a benefit for everyone driving.
Thank you.
That's all I had.
Yeah, so also to kind of piggyback, and somebody over here had a question about what kind of the effects will be. Well, as David had said, you guys have a 5.0 stat within the FSP program. What's going to happen is you're going to delete that Adam truck, and you will have, somebody mentioned, extended response times. Also, what we do is currently every first responder, whether it's tow truck, law enforcement, fire, they have what's called the TIM training, traffic incident management. So there's certain ways we handle incidents out there. So usually with that Adam truck, even though it's a service truck, he does back up for, say for example, a motorist is blocking a lane, one lane, excuse me. He'll come up behind the tow truck, block the lane while that other tow truck's loading that vehicle up. So it is safety. So you're losing some safety items as well. So what's going to have to happen now is we're going to have to call your other tow truck down if a lane is blocked to help that motorist crash, block the lane. Excuse me.
Or CHP will get tired of
So,
responding to that.
correct. So that's the long-term effects that you guys are going to have with if you decide to keep that Adam truck away. We're always looking to expand the service. This gentleman here, you guys are going to be widening 65, so you guys are going to have more traffic. So you're still going to have the non-recurring incidents out there, which we handle.
Yeah.
So, we'd like to go that route. Excuse me. If you guys have some water or something?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I want some coffee.
But so that's going to be the long-term thing. You're going to see that that marking of 5 actually decrease, and then what's going to happen is that's going to affect your state funding that's coming in, because there's a lot of formulas that, like Seth said, is kind of way over and above our head, but that's going to start to affect your state funding in the long run if that 5 mark starts going down. So we'd like to see if there's, we'd like to approach the board and, help, you guys and Mr. Melko, if there's any funding that you guys could find or assist us with up here as far as local match, local funding, we'd be helpful to, assist you in. Thank you, Sully.
Director Guler, did you have another
Yes,
question?
so again, how does the truck get alerted that there's somebody in distress?
So one of the benefits to our program is the fact that our trucks are constantly roving. So a large amount of time, they are rolling up on these incidents.
Okay.
Another portion of the call is basically people call 911.
Right.
So a lot of them, so they'll call 911, so that goes directly to the CHP dispatch.
Right.
And then we do all the dispatching for the program, all the FSP programs, directly from CHP dispatch. So they use the same program similar to us, they use the same radio codes as us.
Okay.
And, Steve and I we monitor the program, but we also act as a liaison out there
Right.
between the drivers and the CHP.
So when we have the customer engagement, we are handing them a survey. Are we doing any other data capture at this point?
The way it works is they are currently, every single truck that we oversee, other than our San Joaquin County, we have them on that application and website that I was telling you about. So what that, as far as the data, they have like a drop-down menu in that app. It selects what kind of vehicle it is, whether it's an SUV, truck, or motorhome, whatever. So we can dwindle down stats as far as you want to go.
Okay, well, I guess what I'm getting at is focusing more on the customer. I'm curious, so we obviously have the advantage of people out running around and the 911 dispatch with the direct communication.
Correct.
As opposed to if I'm driving down the road and I break down, I'm going to call my roadside assistance, and my roadside assistance is going to dispatch somebody from a tow yard somewhere. And I might be sitting there on the side of the road, and your guy rolls up first.
Correct.
Your guy, because somebody called 911, or your guy sees me. So what I'm wondering is how many people are we serving who do have private service, but your guy gets there first? And so when your guy rolls up, or our guy rolls up, then I'm like, oh, I guess I can call my roadside assistance and cancel this call for roadside assistance because you're helping me. So how much duplication do we have of what would otherwise be provided by the private sector?
Well, go ahead.
Just the point on that is, usually we don't eliminate the private service. What happens is we're simply getting them off of the freeway to the
Okay.
next safest spot we can, which is
Okay.
typically, we have designated drop sites. So
But in terms of the tire changes we've heard about, the running out of gas we've heard about, those are all things that I would have, my roadside assistance would help me with that.
Right. So
Correct.
Typically what'll happen is you'll call them, they'll give you an ETA of 30
Right,
minutes,
right.
we'll show up.
Right.
Often, I hate to say it, sometimes that 30 minutes really, that turns into 40 minutes.
No, I understand. I get all that. I'm just trying to figure out, do we have any idea how many folks are being helped through this service that while it's nice, it's more convenient, it's more timely, it is a duplication of a service that somebody would otherwise have with their, and if we don't have data, that's fine, we don't have the data. What I'm really trying to drill down on here is we're looking at how do we secure more funding in order to keep the truck that we've got. Some percentage of these folks have a private service that they've called, our guys got there first. Some percentage don't have a private service. And so what is the marketing opportunity for a partnership with Allstate's roadside assistance, AAA's roadside assistance, anybody that currently is a private sector vendor that operates roadside assistance service, where through a partnership, when we roll up onto, by the way, Mrs. Smith, it was fortunate we happened to be here today, but you're not always in Placer County where we've got this great service, or we might not be available. Do you have a private roadside partner? If not, here's our partner that helps make this service available. And simply hand them a brochure from AAA or whomever we've contacted who's willing to actually help sponsor our program and provide some funding up front to sponsor our program.
Yeah, to touch base on that, there are some rules in play, like our companies can't advertise.
Right.
Of course,
so that would come into
because we'd
play,
hate
because
to
then you're
engage the
showing
private sector to help solve the
favoritism
problem.
to all states. So that, to have, and that's been bounced around, believe me, we talked about,
What's the impediment? What's stopping us from doing
I
it?
think the state rules for the program.
Correct.
Okay, so
would
what are we
need
doing to
change.
stop the state, to change the state rules? How come we're not going at the state saying, hey, guys, you're telling us you're not gonna be able to fund these programs, we got a solution, how about you loosen the rules and let us go solve the problem?
Well, there are some, like she mentioned, there is some funding coming down,
Right, SB1.
SB1, yeah, with that. So you may see a little extra funding. But with that, yeah, there's a lot of rules in play that we can't, have certain advertising on the trucks. Basically, it's just a white truck with the FSP logo. And then, what happens is they can't even refer to other tow companies. Whether it's themselves, we can't stop them from saying, hey, Extreme Towing, yeah, here's my number on the side of the truck. But, that's a violation of our SOP if they go that route. That's basically cause for contract termination
If
at
I
this
mi-
point in time.
If I might, I think we're kind of talking two different things.
No, I
He's
understand,
talking
yes.
about existing rules. And I think what we can do is perhaps bring back something to this board at the next meeting to, on our legislative platform to pursue the changes you're referring to.
Better yet, we just get a hold of Mr. Kiley and Mr. Gaines and say, guys, here's a way that we can leverage the state dollars with private sector money if you'd simply get the state's stupid rules out of our way. We could provide more service, and it's not gonna harm anybody because we got, it's fully disclosed, this is a private sponsor that's helping us pay for this service.
But
And at the board's pleasure, that might be something that you want a presentation on at your next meeting as opposed, or that's something that the board could just provide as direction to staff. But I want the opportunity
I've
to
made-
go through our own process here.
You've answered my questions, and thank you.
And I wanted to touch base on that. Like, most of the funding that we've lost since we've been dealing with this contract has been, I don't know, Dave, maybe, you know, the, what is it, the pollution control district funding. So I don't know if that's a local match or
It is.
a state match or something like that. So it's a lot of local funds that we've been losing, not state funds. And that's why we're here today with the Adam truck in question.
Director Powers has a question.
So, maybe for Celia. So the whole purpose of this program and how the program started quite a while ago was to help CHP get people off the road as quickly and as safely as possible. That's what the program is. So what you're saying today is if we eliminate the Adam truck, we're gonna slow down response time and you're not gonna get people off the road as quickly and as safely as possible. And then just to help Mr. Euler, as I personally have experience breaking down on the highway, CHP showed up first, already had called the truck to come and help me. I had already called my own service. The CHP truck came first, and CHP says, I'm getting you off the road as quick as possible. You are getting off the road with this truck. We're gonna drop you off at our drop-off point. You guys have a drop-off point. And then they waited for my service to come and take me where I had to go. That's how it works, correctly?
Correct.
But if it's a tire or something, they'll fix it and send you on your way. And that's the part of the Adam truck that you don't want to eliminate. That helps get us out of the road. Even if I already have service, I'm going to get it taken care of for free.
Correct.
Well, through my tax dollars.
And that's the way the drivers out there promote the program. Like, we'll see in a lot of returns from the drivers out there that we're helping. Greatest use of tax dollars. To touch base back on the Adam truck, there's a statewide guidelines that we kind of abide by. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but it kind of states that the Adam truck is basically 80% of what a tow truck can do. The only thing it can't do is put something up on the bed. So on our Adam trucks, there is a requirement to have push bumpers on there, so if they do come across something blocking, they can at least push it to the shoulder and get it out of the
Yeah.
lanes.
My only
So-
thing, I felt a lot of pressure having to use that truck when my truck was 20 minutes out, which could turn into 40. And there was a lot of pressure, and I get your job is to get us off the road and keep us safe. There was a lot of pressure, stressful time from the officer side trying to get me off the highway. And then while they were hooking my truck up, my actual service showed up, and they still didn't let me unhook, and it was kind of a bit of a cluster, but that's okay.
And in that case there, you did have the option to decline. As long as you're not a hazard on the freeway, we have people all day long, oh, you know, no, I have AAA coming.
When an officer tells me I'm
Well,
gonna
yeah,
do
in that
something,
case
I
there,
do it.
yeah. So in that case there, but we,
Yeah.
like if one of our FSP drivers is rolling up on behind them, we get it, you know, FSP refusal over the radio. All right, hey, if you want to just, you know, sit there and wait for your AAA or Allstate, you know, or cell phone tow, then you guys are good to go.
It is a great service, though. I appreciated it.
I'm glad we could help you out with that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Sergeant Tammy George out of the Auburn CHP office. And to address your question, Mr. Euler, I would say about 50% of the people we come in contact with do not have roadside service. That's why they're getting flat tires. That's why they're running out of gas. And it is an instrumental program here in Placer County. It also helps our officers the less time we can be on the side of the road and keep us safe, the more time we can be out patrolling and helping the people. We have, everyone knows that most of our officers are killed by traffic accidents, and when we're on the side of the road, we're setting ourselves up to be struck by a random motorist. We can call a rotation tow when somebody breaks down. Sometimes it's 40 minutes. We've had people on the side of the road for an hour, and this is outside of the FSP, the timelines. So FSP being out there to help us during those commute hours is very instrumental. At the most, we have 3 or 4 officers from the county line up to Colfax, all the way Forest Hill, Meadow Vista, Granite Bay, all the way up 65 to Wheatland. 3 or 4 officers, the whole county. So we rely on the FSP officers to help move traffic and keep everybody moving safely. And if there is a collision, they can move to a drop point, and then the rotation tow will come. It keeps the traffic moving. So we're definitely in favor of keeping as many trucks on the roadway as possible. But just to let you know how important it is for the Auburn CHP.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, anyone else in the audience wish to address it all?
I just wanted for Director Euler and for other members of the board, there is in the board packet in the back on the status report, FSP statistics for the past quarter. And so these are roll-up, and of course, if the board wants to see more detailed data, we can break it out into a variety of ways. But for example, it does note, call for private assistance. So we do track that data to the extent that we can when the FSP tow truck operator is interacting with the customer. So.
All righty, anyone else wish to? Thank you for your input. Thank you.
Where is that?
Good morning, Mike Carabedian, Placer Group Sierra Club. Thank you. I think every one of your questions and all the answers are very necessary, and I'm glad that you have asked them and explored each of these questions. Just 2 comments. Response time is obviously the critical thing. There's going to be a change in response time, and obviously any tow truck company, probably any dispatcher knows what the response time is. And if they're not telling you in terms of the contracts you have, that should be something you could put in the contract to help. That contract could have the data requirements in it you need to make these decisions. And in terms of $25,000 cost, if you think just one more accident because of that, if you think of the property damage costs, the injuries costs, and the public costs of getting there, taking care of that, the hospitalization, whatever, we really need to find the money, I would think. I hope you would find the money and continue the program. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further audience members wish to discuss this? Seeing none, we are being asked to approve authorization to negotiate and sign change order number 2 to the Placer County Freeway Service Patrol Contractor Services Agreement. Is there anyone that would wish to make a motion in that? It's been moved. Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve staff recommendation. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? No. One no.
Okay, then we.
So now do we have to do a roll call? Okay. We'll have to do a roll call.
Baker.
Yes.
Broadway. No. Hesh. Yes. Holmes.
Yes.
Powers. Yes. Rohan.
Yes.
Rivas. Yes. Euler.
Okay, thank you. With that, we will now move to item I, congestion mitigation and air quality allocation criteria. Oh, you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
I have this item. Staff is requesting board approval of guidelines for allocation of congestion mitigation and air quality, or CMAQ funding, and the guidelines are shown in attachment 1. There have been some recent developments. It was just mentioned that Senate Bill 1 passed, and so we have an opportunity to leverage our CMAQ funding to attract some additional state dollars. Per the proposed CMAQ guidelines, up to 25% of the funding is discretionary, and then the remaining amount is distributed to each jurisdiction based on population. In the past, the discretionary CMAQ funding has been used for the pre-construction of the State Route 65 widening project in South Placer County, the presentation you just heard earlier. And staff has been working with local agencies to identify two regional projects for discretionary funding. The first is a roundabout in the city of Colfax, and that would be at the I-80 ramps with State Route 174. With board concurrence, we could leverage $900,000 in CMAQ funding to attract $1.7 million in state funds and developer fees, and that would fully fund construction of that roundabout. The second project is sidewalks on Highway 49 in the city of Auburn and in Placer County. Caltrans is currently working on a $39 million project to repave Highway 49 from Interstate 80 up to Dry Creek Road, which is approximately 4.5 miles. Caltrans has added bicycle and pedestrian facilities. However, some gaps would still exist between the existing and the proposed sidewalks. With board concurrence, there is an opportunity to leverage $2 million in CMAQ funding to attract active transportation program or other potential funding sources to construct additional sidewalks along Highway 49. As in all previous cycles, each jurisdiction is recommended to receive a fair share target based on population, and that is shown in attachment 2. That's in addition to the discretionary funding. And the Technical Advisory Committee has reviewed this proposal and recommends approval, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, questions from board members? Seeing none, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to address the board on this item? Seeing none, we'll bring it back for action. It's been moved and seconded to approve the requested action. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any abstentions? Any no? Okay, great. So now we'll move to item J, state legislative update and implications for local funding strategy.
Okay, this one is my item. Good morning, Chair Holmes, members of the board. We are back to talking money. And the highlight of what we're going to be talking about is SB 1. As you recall, that passed the state legislature last month. And it is a bill that the board did support that would generate more funding for transportation. But of course, the devil is always in the details, and that's what we're going to talk about this morning. I provided a color flow chart that is a very simplified version of this bill, and even then, it looks pretty complicated to me, and you know, this is my line of work, so I'm hoping that we can walk through this a little bit and have a high-level discussion about what this funding does and doesn't do. As you can see, the funding sources total about $5.2 billion statewide per year. And the increases that are shown here on the gas tax, on the transportation improvement fee, which is a vehicle registration fee, and the diesel excise and sales taxes, as well as a fee on electric vehicles, little tiny gray dot there in the middle, that is what comprises that $5.2 billion per year. And I will note that it is indexed for inflation, unlike the existing or the previous gas taxes. The biggest chunk of this goes into what's known as the road maintenance and rehabilitation account, and that's split between the locals and Caltrans through a fund called the State Highway Operation Protection Program. We have been very successful in leveraging dollars that Caltrans has through the shop. For example, the just approved funds that you have made available in the CMAQ program on Highway 49, those are matching shop funds. On 174 and I-80 in Colfax, those are also matching shop funds. So, as well as the I-80-65 interchange, there is a big chunk of money of SHOP funds in that project as well. So that does benefit us in many ways, if not having direct control over it. The other portion of that does go to the local jurisdictions, your cities, as well as the county. And at this point, we don't have solid estimates on exactly how much that's going to be, but it is roughly in the neighborhood of doubling your existing gas tax revenues. So it does go a long way towards helping deal with those potholes and those pavement problems that exist in every single jurisdiction, but it does not entirely solve the problem. We're probably more like 2/3 of the way to solving the problem. So I do want to manage expectations on those additional funds are sorely needed, and we all know that, but it's not going to fix everything. There's also set-asides in the road maintenance and rehabilitation account, and there are a couple of things I want to highlight in that, and that is there is what they call a self-help counties incentive, and that is $200 million a year. That is to provide matching funds for counties that have passed local transportation sales taxes, such as Measure M would have done in this past November. There is an opportunity that we are pushing that would allow not just transportation sales taxes, but also transportation impact fees, such as the South Placer Regional Transportation Authority program, to also be eligible. And I think that's got some traction at the state, so stay tuned for that. All of this stuff has got guidelines that have to be addressed. Most of them are going through the California Transportation Commission. Most of them are hopefully going to be done by the end of the year, maybe into early next year. And we are participating on as many of those committees in helping to make guidelines that are as beneficial to our needs as possible. So, self-help counties, there's money going to active transportation, which Luke had mentioned about a possible, the opportunity of leveraging some of those CMAQ dollars on Highway 49 from that. Also note, there is a little bit more money for Freeway Service Patrol. $25 million statewide is not a huge amount of money. I do note the Freeway Service Patrol funds that we get from the state require a 25% match, and that's really one of our hardest challenges because our sources of matching funds are almost non-existent. We've gotten grants from the Air Pollution Control District. They've indicated that they've been ratcheting them down over the years to the point where they've said next year probably not. So it's a continuing problem for us in finding those matching funds. So I do want to let the board be aware, but we'll, start looking through, sofa cushions to try and find those matching funds because we all heard about how necessary the program is. There's also money for transit that will come through the State Transit Assistance Program that it comes through formula to our jurisdictions, so that does allow us to participate in that. There's also some funding that would go to the Capital Corridor Rail Service. Not huge amounts of money, but every bit helps. And then I do want to highlight what you see there in the white box, the Solutions for Congested Corridors program. And that's about 5% of the overall money. And, you look at that and think, wow, Highway 65, 8065 interchange, that'd be great. I don't want to hold out a whole lot of hope. I've seen in the legislation, they really indicate that this money is for alternative solutions to congested corridors, things like transit, things like parallel capacity, things of that nature. So when you look at solutions for congested corridors, a lot of our minds go immediately to road widenings, and I don't think that is the case here. So I want to let the board know that as well. But on the other side, there's also funding for trade corridor enhancements. And I think I-80 is a great candidate for that. I'm optimistic that we might be able to attract some kind of funds for 8065 interchange. You know, I-80 is the only all-weather crossing of the Sierras, 4,000 miles. And that's something we sell to the feds a lot. It's also compelling to the state. But we're going to have a lot of competition on that. The Port of Los Angeles is got a lot of sway. The Bay Area has a lot of sway. There's a lot of goods movement that goes around California, but I think we've got a good story as well. So we will be, Luke is on that committee working on those guidelines, and we'll try and get them to be as favorable to our projects as possible. So that's the overview of SB1. So it's overall, I mean, we're going to see some impact at the pump come November. That's when the billing starts to happen. People will start seeing this in their vehicle registration. I do understand, you know, in the full disclosure, that there is an effort ongoing that would repeal SB1 to place it on the November 28, I think it's the November 2018 ballot, at least, or possibly in June. So this may all go away. So, you know, we will, of course, be nimble and deal with whatever the situation is and try and get whatever funding out of it we can if, you know, as long as it is available, whether that's a year or for the foreseeable future. So perhaps I should stop there, or do you want me to continue on with the
Let's see,
transportation funding?
Are there any questions at this point? Seeing none, go ahead, proceed.
Okay. And then I wanted to update the board in terms of our transportation sales tax district and the discussion that we had about that and pursuing that legislation. I will say things are not going well. The bill that we had been supporting from Assemblyman Gloria out of San Diego that would allow any regional transportation planning agency such as PCTPA, that is a sales tax authority, to designate a sub-district has become a 2-year bill. It is not moving forward this year, which does really hamstring us in terms of being able to put something on the 2018 ballot. But our legislative advocate, Mark Watts, is working with other sponsors, and all hope is not lost, but we will probably know in the next 2 weeks if this is going to be possible this year or not. So stay tuned for that. And then in terms of the board's direction, we are moving forward with the funding strategy outreach as part of our work program for this next year, and we did go out to bid for a consultant on that. We had a review committee that interviewed the top candidates, and that included myself as well as Chair Holmes and board member Rohan, and the recommendation is to hire TBWB Strategies as the preferred firm, and that to authorize me to negotiate and sign a contract with TBWB to include a Placer-based team member as part of that. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right. Supervisor Euler.
The part of the SB1 that is attributable to increased vehicle registration, how much is that?
That is $1.48 billion in 1819.
And what does that translate into in terms of additional registration per vehicle?
It depends upon the value of the vehicle. It is on an escalating basis. I believe the lowest is $5,000 of value, and under, I believe, is something like $50 additional per year, going up to, I believe, if your vehicle is worth $60,000 or more, it's something like $175.
Okay. My comments are more to the proposed action in terms of moving forward with anything as it regards outreach on a special tax district. And it's in the context of what the state has done with SB 1. As we sit here today, California's gas tax on average is already, not gas tax, I'm sorry, cost per gallon is 72 cents higher than the national average today. That's before we increase it another 12 cents with the tax. We'll be almost $1 higher than the national average, and people will be paying the additional fee. I know that we had some success driving above the 2/3 threshold in certain segments of our county. And I know that we're looking at creating a special district. I would bet you $1,000 today that if you polled today on the question of a new sales tax in those areas, it loses by 5 to 10 points, just based on what the state has done with this gas tax. I bet we lose 10 points off the top of where we were just based on this. And I say that mostly anecdotally, some data-driven, but a significant number of people that I know who reluctantly supported our effort last time have made it very clear that based on what the state has done with this gas tax, there's no way in heck they would be supporting a local effort moving forward. And in fact, they would actively work against a local effort moving forward until we knew what exactly the state was actually going to do with these dollars. So I think it is a very, very, very tough sell. Of course, you'll recall I was skeptical the last time when we went from 61 to 63, and after the election we ended at 64. I just don't see it. Just pure and simple. I do not see us being successful in moving a sales tax for transportation in the current environment that has been created for us by the state with this gas tax. And I think it will be a matter of a few years before we are able to differentiate in the minds of voters what the state has continued to do, assuming it survives being on the ballot. I mean, if they actually get a repeal of the gas tax on the ballot, then really forget about any effort that we might have, because then you're going to have millions of dollars across the state poured into messaging that's all about they have more than enough money, they just need to spend it properly. And then we're beyond dead in the water. We don't even have water to be dead in at that point. So I am not at all supportive of us at this point, given the messaging we're getting from the state with putting us on a 2-year bill cycle, with our district, with what's going on here. I just don't see spending any additional dollars being in our interest at this point. I think it's far better for us to take a wait and see in terms of how the state actually ends up, if they're allowed to end up moving forward with the gas tax after the voters have their say, how they actually move forward with it, and then seeing if we can create a clear and compelling argument to our local voters that something in addition to that increase in the registration fee that they just paid, and the fact that they're now paying almost $1 a gallon more than the national average, if we can make a compelling argument at that point. Just my thoughts.
Director Brohan.
I would like to say to the board and to Kirk that I share a lot of your frustrations with the position that we're in, but I really think it underscores the necessity for PCTPA to engage in an outreach program that provides education to the public on what SB 1 does for them. I think it's going to be really necessary from an economic development standpoint for each of the cities and the county to make sure that the community understands where we are in terms of funding to deal with the transportation improvements that we'd like to see to reduce congestion. If we don't do that, I think we're going to be unfairly asked to undo land use decisions that we've made in the past, and that we will lose opportunities to move more jobs into our region because they will see that we are on no path in order to prepare for the public to take another look at this. I'm not proposing that we do this at any particular time in terms of bringing a measure before the voters, but I think it's extremely important. We have highly bifurcated media in our Placer County region. This is going to be an effective way for the public to understand where we stand and what role they have to play in us going forward. So I very much support what's being proposed by staff.
Any other comments from board members? I have to concur with Director Rohan. By doing nothing, nothing will get done. And I think it's in our best interest to go ahead and pursue. We interviewed this company. I was very impressed by their focused effort. They have a very important role as far as educating the public, and they have a good program to do that. So I would be supportive of recommending staff's proposal. Any other comments? Anyone in the audience wish to address the board on this item? All right. Do I see any another light on? No? Okay, this is the time where we take action. Is there anyone here wishing to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to support the staff's recommendation.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Been moved and seconded to support staff's recommendation on funding, local funding strategy. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
No.
All right, we need a roll call, please.
Baker.
No.
Hesh.
Yes.
Holmes.
Yes.
Powers.
Yes.
Rohan.
Yes.
Tribus.
No.
Euler.
No.
Doesn't pass.
We're good.
So did the motion fail?
Motion passes.
It passed?
Wait a minute.
You sure?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Double check that, please.
We're missing Broadway, and that's a yes.
I'm sorry.
Oh.
And
Okay.
thank you. It passes.
Okay.
Good.
It does pass.
Thank you. All right. Now, we will move to item K, fiscal year 2017-18 overall work program and budget.
Okay, well, after all we've discussed, this may be kind of a little lower controversy here. This is the final version of the 17-18 overall work program and budget, and this pretty much looks like the one you saw back in February as the preliminary draft. This incorporates Caltrans comments, which were I'd say more format and not substantive, and it included, they always provide a chart of their planning activities, which is shown on page XIV as part of the introduction. This does reflect the reduced funding in the Freeway Service Patrol, also reflects the inclusion of the regional funding strategy that the board just approved. It does keep our staffing level the same, and we do have a balanced budget. One thing I did want to note is that there's been a lot of stuff in the paper lately about unfunded liability for PERS in public agencies. I know a lot of your jurisdictions are grappling with that, but I do want to note that has not been an issue for PCTPA, and for a couple of reasons. One is that the board had a lot of foresight of not making changes to the formula back when a lot of jurisdictions did. We've remained at 2% at 55, not 2.5 or 2.7 at 55, as many agencies went to back in the year 2000. It's also true that none of our staff are safety employees, which have a much higher rate than office-type people like the PCTPA staff, where we try and stay out of harm's way. But it's my understanding that the cost for PERS for one safety officer is more than it costs for our entire staff. So to give you an order of magnitude, we've tried to pay off our unfunded liability. They won't let us because it changes every year, but we do account for that as part of our staffing costs, and it is included in the budget before you today.
Right.
So with that, happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from board members? Anyone in the audience wish to address this? We're being asked to authorize the executive director to submit the attached final fiscal year 2017-18 overall work program and budget to Caltrans. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the requested action. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, we'll now move to the executive director's report.
Yes, I have an item kind of hot off the presses, and that is the federal fiscal year 18 president's budget was just released, well, yesterday, late yesterday. And I do have some commentary from our federal advocate, Sandy Esposito, on this. And I will summarize it this way, is that on the one hand, there has been a lot touted on $1 trillion for transportation. And what this budget does is it allocates $200 billion over the next 10 years to meet that $1 trillion. So basically, they're expecting a 4-to-1 contribution, 4 coming from the state and local coffers to match every dollar of federal dollars. So it does really continue to put the pressure on us locally in order to come up with those kind of significant matches. It does cut the FHWA, or excuse me, the Department of Transportation, it's not just FHWA. It does cut the Department of Transportation budget by $13 billion. So that's going to be a challenge in terms of some of the ongoing programs. And I know that Director Hesch will be interested to know that they, again, have eliminated Amtrak funding. But from what our federal advocate says, that's probably dead on arrival in Congress because there is a tremendous amount of support for train service around the country. So don't worry too much. We'll keep a close eye, but don't think they're taking the train away quite yet. They, again, eliminated some of the grant programs, the Tiger grants, which we've applied for, we've never gotten. It's highly competitive, but he does expect that Congress will reinstate that as well. So, it's a little bit of a mixed bag in terms of what we might hope for in terms of transportation, but I think the bottom line is that we're going to have to step up to the plate and come up with local and state money to be able to attract any kind of federal dollars. So that concludes my report.
All righty, great. Any questions? Board direction to staff.
I just have a comment. Is it appropriate to make a comment now, or wait until?
No, no, it's fine.
Okay. I'd just like to thank the Board of Directors and acknowledge your vote on the CMAQ funding today, which allowed, and staff, of course, and everybody in the department that worked on it. Our city manager and our Public Works Department leader were here earlier for the vote. And I just wanted to also inform you that Colfax is growing, and we look to increase our population by perhaps as many as 100 to 200 in the next, let's say, 3 years, which will probably make us the fastest growing community again in the United States. We did that 15 years ago when we added the same number of people. And we have 2 really significant projects that we're able to use this funding for, and want to appreciate. And thanks to everybody. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Director Hesh. Oh, I see lights. Let's see, who's over here? Director Powers.
If Tony's talking about that, I want to thank the board also for supporting the Highway 49 sidewalk improvements. Celia knows I've been talking about that for 13 years now, saying that that is a very important part that we've needed in our community for a long time. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Director Broadway.
Yes, thank you. Celia, the only thing I would ask is that we continue efforts to look at potential funding for the FSP. I am concerned about the reduction in the service. I think most of us have either experienced it or know someone who have experienced a breakdown on the highway. Certainly not a safe situation. The officers expressed concern about their safety, but just the impacts it has overall on traffic flows. I mean, we could quickly start to summarize that there's a benefit having the service and reducing what's available, but I also have to concur with Supervisor Euler in relationship to finding ways to, if we're responding and we have other services available that are out there, how we share costs, just, and if you need help turning over cushions, let me know. I'm willing to help there as well. But just ask that we explore all options so that we can ensure we maintain the highest levels of support and service possible.
So based on the earlier discussion amongst the board, should I take a direction to staff to bring back a recommendation to pursue legislation that would allow public-private partnerships in FSP?
Does it require legislation, or is it simply a rule? Was it
That
actually
I would have to look into.
I doubt it was written in the legislation. I suspect it was probably just a rule in implementation. And I think it might be as easy as just prevailing upon somebody to say, why don't you let us local jurisdictions figure out how to best leverage these dollars?
In all candor, that may take legislation.
Well, again, if it's simply a rule, it doesn't. If it was actually codified in the legislation that there are no private dollars allowed, then it would. But, you know, whichever way you guys end up coming up with, this is the kind of thing that.
We'll have to do a little bit of research on that level of detail and find out what the most effective way of making that change is. In saying that, even if it's a rule, prevailing on this administration may require legislation. That's what I mean.
Understood.
I think the point is that we're suggesting you move forward with checking this out and seeing how it can be,
Explore all avenues.
how it can be done.
Yes.
All right, any other comments? All right. There are information about items available for you in the packet, and our next regularly scheduled Placer County Transportation Planning Agency Board meeting is June 28th, 2017. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.